thanks everyone for coming. If you can hear me, please just drop something in the chat. I'm making sure that this is all working. And while that's going on, I'm trusting it is working. I just wanted to welcome everyone to this roundtable to talk a bit about buying software as a service. Hopefully this is a good use of all of your lunch times today, and we can have a bit of an interactive conversation about buying SaaS. So I've got a few kind of topics that I've structured up that I wanted to talk through a little bit in the roundtable, but I wanted to be able to pause as we go along and give people an opportunity to type their questions or their thoughts. There's probably a number of people on this session who are quite expert in this area or have had their own experiences in buying in this area. So this is an opportunity for you to also, share your knowledge, and I'm hoping I'll learn some things as well along the way. So I thought I'd just start off quickly with a little bit about who Grosvenor is. We're experts without attitude. We work with public and private sector organisations to optimise their performance, and we provide services in three practice areas. Our public sector advisory, which is essentially management consulting and advisory services, our property advisory, and our procurement advisory. And we have a number of kind of specialisations as well, and I work in the ICT procurement specialisation or ICT specialisation across those areas. I've been working in consulting for a long time. I've spent over 30 years working in IT and about 20 years working with procurement. And I've worked to implement some pretty big contracts, up to 700 million or so, across Victorian government, New South Wales government, federal government, and also in private enterprise organisations. So that's me. Now, I just thought it'd be useful to talk a bit about buying, because buying sort of sounds really simple, but often we do come across issues within our own organisations or with suppliers in kind of executing the vision. And I just thought as a little bit of an anecdote, if we think about just needing to buy something that's pretty common, pretty simple, like a new car, you can do a quick assessment. You work out, well, my vehicle's pretty much out of warranty, or maybe my fixed price servicing window's up, kilometres are starting to clock, or maybe it's not giving me the outcomes that I want as an individual for the environment or my carbon footprint. And that all sounds pretty simple, but there are a number of concerns, risks, complexities, and transitional issues that we deal with, and hopefully this is all relatable to everybody. If you've gone to buy a car in the market recently, you'll realise that if you haven't bought one for 5 years or so, the whole market has changed, or it's in a transition. Things aren't the same as when you last looked. There are a lot of new entrants to the market. There's a lot of new Chinese entrants. There's a lot of brands that have changed hands. Volvo used to be owned by the Swedes. Now it's owned by Chinese corporations, all that sort of thing. If you're going to do research, it requires time out of your day, maybe even during workday. And you've got other stakeholders in your house. You've got, maybe the learner driver, or you've got young kids that have certain needs. And then when it comes to looking at risks, you've got to understand whether you can afford what you really want. Can you afford what you need? Do you have an appetite for change? Are you prepared to stick your neck out perhaps and have a go at buying an EV or a hybrid? What's the real price right now? There's a lot of uncertainty in this space about how long is it going to take to deliver, and people not providing guaranteed pricing before you put your deposit down. And then there's some complexity around, am I going to buy new or used? Am I going to source it online or through a dealer? How am I going to finance this? Am I going to get a loan or a lease, or pay cash? And then you have to manage the changeover, that last mile of completing the transaction. You've got to get it cleaned. You've got to get it roadworthy. You might have to organise repairs. You've got to arrange for advertising. You've got to sit for tyre kickers who want to come and have a look. You've got to deal with haggling. Everyone's, oh yeah, can you take off another 1,000? You know, I've only bought this much money, or whatever their situation is. You've got to manage an exchange of money, whether you're going to take a bank check or you're going to do an online transfer or a pay ID. And then you've got to complete a bunch of paperwork. So it sort of all sounds very easy to start with, but when you actually start to get into the detail, it can become a bit more complicated. And that's often what happens, I think, when we're buying new products. So talking about the complexities of buying IT systems, I just thought I'd open the roundtable with people maybe talking a bit about what their concerns are for initiating a new SaaS systems procurement, or what are the key concerns of some of your stakeholders. Now, people should be able to unmute themselves if they want to talk, and if not, you can just type some of your thoughts or concerns in the chat. Anyone want to open the conversation on this? Is the technology working? Ricardo, can you type a message or something in chat, or unmute yourself and at least say g'day so I know it's working?
Hello, everybody. I hope it's working.
Oh, is that Ricardo? Is that you?
Yes, that's me.
Great, thanks. Well, that's good. Good to know that's all working. Can see a few people typing. I'll keep rolling along, but keep typing if you've got concerns or things, anything that you can talk about. Then other people in the group can perhaps engage on, or I can make sure I try and cover some of those thoughts or concerns a bit later on. In the meantime, yeah, I suppose when we come to that point where we're working with a business. Yeah, should we look for custom-built software or off-the-shelf software? It's a good question. I'll keep that one on the list there, and definitely try to talk a bit about that, because I do have some ideas. So yeah, people have issues or things they want to talk about or me to talk about, just drop them in the chat, and I'll queue them up for a bit later. So we sort of find ourselves at a crossroads. You know, we've got enablers that allow us to move forward and purchase new core software products or SaaS products, but we also have barriers. You know, they might be organizational situations like funding, but they can also be people concerns and stakeholder concerns. You know, whether the business knows we need to do something, but it's very difficult perhaps to engage with leadership. You know, you might be in a particular situation, like maybe you're a medical organization, and the implications of getting the new product wrong are really big. There's often the concern about being the front page of the newspaper. And then there's some of the enablers where, you know, the business landscape is transforming, and maybe you're still on some older technology. I guess the kind of classic example is those people that are still perhaps running, you know, Windows 7, which then over time starts to kind of choke the organization, because the businesses you want to work with, the software you want to implement moves on, and eventually you become non-compatible. You know, if you can get to a situation where the business understands that there will be a bit of pain, there will be a bit of time and effort and expenditure that's required, but that at the end of the tunnel, at the end of the process, they'll get better outcomes. And really, one of the key problems really with the status quo is if we allow that to dictate where we go over the long haul, we end up with a whole lot of these sort of issues here, and you might associate with or recognize some of these. You can get locked into particular processes, or you can get locked into particular systems. You can end up in a situation where that workaround that you had to implement because the product wouldn't do what you wanted becomes the practice, and you can even get to a point where no one knows why we did it this way, because it's not really what we wanted to be doing, but it was the best that we could do with what we had. You can end up with a lot of fragmentation, so a loss of, or an increase, or an overabundance of manual processing or manual reporting, pulling data out of systems and putting it into Excel, or running cross tabs and things like that, pivot tables and things like that. You can get fragmentation of observability, where everyone would expect to be able to see certain types of data, but because of the different parts of the organization or the workflows, that stuff gets chopped up, and you end up having to do a lot of emailing of stuff around, or running meetings so people know where things are, where normally you would expect they should just be able to look at the system and see what's going on. Over time, you end up with a misalignment of what the system can do with the business objectives. And as we move forward, businesses are more consistently and more regularly repositioning themselves and what their objectives are. You might get out of step with legal requirements. Those things can change from time to time, and then you may have to implement, you're back to workarounds or off-system processes. And then you've got the cybersecurity and privacy issues, where products are not able to keep up with the demands, or certain vulnerabilities are not solvable with an older platform, and you need to move to a newer solution. And then ultimately, all of these things create issues around value for money. Your agility is compromised, you can't innovate, improvements become cost prohibitive, etc. So, and I wanted to talk then off the back of that about buying software as a service, and some techniques and approaches that are hopefully going to be useful for us in thinking about this moving forward, and managing either the real risk or the perceived risk of these types of systems. So I was thinking a bit about, what should we be thinking when we're thinking about having to, step off the platform and begin to wrestle with the idea of buying buying ICT systems. And although our core business systems are complex, more than ever, they become more complex as we automate more things and become more capable. They do become more complicated. But I think we have greater opportunity to manage this during procurement processes than we've ever had. And a lot of that has to do with, the visibility of those products, the amount of information that's published, the relative ease of finding other businesses that are using those products, and the ability to get access to information and to actually get hands-on with the products. So my thoughts were, we really should be looking to leverage the strength of software as a service to our advantage as much as we can during the procurement process. So there's 3 areas that I wanted to talk about in the roundtable. One is partnerships, the second is understanding, and the third is getting hands-on. And I'm going to try and get through those and allow a bit of time, hopefully, for people to throw some questions or their insights and learnings at me as well. So from a partnership perspective, that's kind of point one. I think procurement needs to be working more actively with the business to achieve better outcomes from the procurement of SaaS systems. Building those connections with both the IT or operational technology teams and with business stakeholders, and working across the organization silos to build consensus. A lot of SaaS products don't necessarily fit into a particular silo. They're often going to cross over and have impacts on more than one area. So there are multiple stakeholders that need to be managed. And not everybody in this sort of triangle here has all the answers. The business kind of knows what they want. They know what they've got to try and achieve. IT understands the operating environment and the standards and the integrations. And procurement really is the part of the organisation that's trying to lead the value for money conversation and the consolidation of suppliers and platforms. And I think maybe there's a bit of a call on the procurement teams to take on a bit of risk, which is, I guess, part and parcel of leadership, and help the business, help the technology and the business stakeholders to take that big step and start to buy into these types of systems and products while managing the risk. And I think it may look like it's a really big, difficult journey, but we have to understand that we're the people that walk this path, this procurement sourcing pathway more regularly than the business or IT, and therefore we've got an opportunity to lead that. And I just put this diagram here because this is sort of a conversation we just recently had with a customer about, them seeing this as this huge process from where we are now. We've got an idea, we need to solve it, to, having a contract at some point in the future. But what we talked them through was how you can break this down into bite-sized pieces and deliver that outcome over a period of time. And the little decision milestones there, pardon me, kind of show some of the major and minor decision points that you can walk the business and the technology teams through, where they have the opportunity to make go, no-go decisions, or to say, well, we've got to this point and we don't have quite the right product fit, or we haven't done enough work on understanding our requirements, or whatever. And so there's a good set of steps and stages we can take it through. And the orange cone there really shows that the idea of that sort of staged process is to progressively reduce the scope, price, and contractual uncertainty, so that at the beginning there's lots of uncertainty. You're not quite sure what your scope is, you're not quite sure what sort of products can do what you want, you're not sure what your competitors or your peers are doing. But as you progress through this sort of process, you look to answer those questions and carve off the uncertainty, so that eventually you get to the end and you've hopefully got a contract with a good scope of work, and it's all quite well understood, and the amount of uncertainty that remains is reduced. So a bit of a roundtable question, what sort of approaches and techniques do you use to build those relationships, to understand and overcome your customer concerns? Or what do you see as holding back your customers in replacing that aged core business system or moving it to the cloud? You can either unmute your mic and talk if you're brave, or you can type some thoughts in the chat. Questions or advice are good. While a few people are typing, oh, here we go. Yeah. So, I think, Ricardo, I think scalability is one of the key kind of features of SaaS products. One of the key things about SaaS products is that they're offered by vendors at a price point and with a set of terms and conditions and things that are built on the idea of a much bigger scale. So on-premise software is pretty much built on that idea of one customer at a time. That's sort of the maximum extent of the scale. Whereas SaaS products are built, perhaps on the idea of global scale. You think about Microsoft Office 365, or you think about Google Workspace. The idea there is that it's designed to scale globally. Doesn't matter if we're talking about individuals or we're talking about loosely knit organizations or we're talking about big businesses, it's designed to scale. So I think the issues around SaaS and scale are actually very low risk, much lower risk than on-premise software. Risk is always a concern, yes. I'll talk a bit about, I think, this sort of progressive approach is a good way to deal with risk and allowing you to take some of these steps along the way to really understand like what the concerns are and what the risks are. And they exist on all sorts of different fronts. As much as we might have a current system and process, people don't always know whether they want to just carry that process to the future or how much transformation do they want, how much change do they want, how much do you rely on the system to bring, the future best practice, and how do you go on that kind of journey? And I think, staging that in a way that allows everyone to follow along is a useful way to approach it. Build a structured set of questionnaire to understand business requirements. Yeah, I think that's a really good way to do that. I know a lot of consultants like we use questionnaires quite a lot, but we also use questionnaires a lot inside our business to understand things. So I just filled out a questionnaire this morning within our business that was about, well, what am I planning to do when I come back on the first week of January, because we know it's going to be a bit of a quiet period and we're trying to make sure that we're a bit coordinated around what we do. So there's definitely a big opportunity for businesses to be using some of that stuff to continually or to progressively engage with your customers, and it's pretty powerful stuff. Your customers will, if you're able to do that sort of thing and then play back to them, hey, this is what everybody's telling us, that can really assuage concerns. If people are like, oh, everyone's thinking the same as me, we think that this is a big area of advantage for us and this is where we've all got concerns. That sort of stuff's super powerful. All right, I'll keep rolling on, but if people want to keep throwing up any questions or ideas and things there, I'll try and answer them as I go along. So developing understanding, and this is sort of a little bit about where we segued into as well, is I've got sort of three areas that I think are really important in developing understanding, and that is defining the business needs, and that's really what John, your comment was about there. The more people we can engage, the more people we can talk to over time, the better we can understand the need. And sometimes, what immediately comes to people's minds as a need can change when there's a bit of a deeper understanding and investigation to what that is. So really trying to make sure that we're aligning the business objectives and we understand what they are and we're aligning them to the investment case. Like, why are we going to do this? Or, arguably, why do we keep not doing this? Is there some, investment logic behind that says, we've got good stuff, or what we've got is good enough? Focusing on business capabilities and not systems. So one of the perhaps slightly weaker points around SaaS products is you can go and engage with a business user and say, tell me what your needs are, and they'll say, I need Xero, or I need SAP, or something. And that's not really a need, but they've done some sort of internal processing to go from possibly something that's reasonably well understood, but it might be something that's a bit more intuitive, to I need this product. But to really make sure that you've got the right products that are really going to fit with your business and your business requirements, you can't go straight from, we need to fix something to we need this product. You need to understand like what the business requirements really are, because that allows you to investigate, examine, start to shortlist and really understand what products are going to do the job. We just ran a tender recently, $100 million procurement, where the customer wanted to build the user interface because they wanted to control how their customers experienced this product that they were building. And so that was a really key selection criteria, that everything was available through, application programming interfaces, so that they could build their own user interface on the top and control what their customers see when they engage, and integrate their customers sort of like one portal or one look and feel to do what they need to do. But under the covers, if they've got the finance system and the planning system and the other bits and pieces that are doing things, that they can hide all of those and provide exactly the experience that they want customers to see. That massively skewed the requirements and how you went about evaluating it, because those products that might have amazing user interfaces already, that didn't really impact too much the selection process, because what they needed was something where they could get access to all of the different controls and systems and data in the back end to be able to create that custom view. So understanding the business capability you're trying to build is super important. Keeping the scope tight, I think, is really important. It can be easy to either go far too narrow and implement just a small slice of something, which then means you've got to deal with more integration points or more products in your portfolio than you would like. And then it's also equally, you can wander off the other way and go far too big, and end up in the situation where you're essentially trying to run your business whilst you're performing heart-lung surgery at the same time, because you're changing everything. And so having a really good conversation about what is the scope and understanding what the market can offer. So if we're saying, the scope is these 4 things, you might say, well, if we look at the market, we've got an option for buying, one product can do all of that, or we could buy 3 products that are best of breed that do, 3 parts of that scope, and then understanding which of those approaches or which of those product matches are going to give you the best outcome. Because sometimes those big products that do everything, it's great, it's sort of like all in one, but then they might have certain functional areas that are just very weak, and you're sort of trading off getting it all in one versus having to deal with, purchase order management just being terrible, or procure to pay being undercooked, or maybe it's a new extension that they've just added and it's really not mature enough. And so I think you start reasonably broad within the confines of your requirements, but you get prepared to cut back and resize the scope to ensure that it is doing as much of what you need as possible, but also has a good match to what the market can offer. And that leads to this third point, which is aligning supplier capabilities and strengths, aligning to supplier capabilities and strengths. So, checking what you want and what the market can offer, and you might find that you have to, that it's wise to drop an element of scope because there are no suppliers that really offer a strong product in that area. Maybe you're better to stick with the tool that you've currently got. And looking at, what is the technology and the platform, how's the implementation going to work, how does support work, and how does that align to your, delivery model. So if that means that you might need to bring on more support staff, or if you're saying, well, whatever this product is, we need to be able to customize it ourselves and operate it ourselves, so we're going to need to bring in new people, new capabilities, etc. So really, the diagram there just sort of shows, this is where we kind of come in, is that, often IT might have a real sense of their need, the business might have a good sense of their need. They don't necessarily have that good sense of what the market can offer. And so part of our leadership situation here is our ability to understand the scope, understand the match to the market, understand the gaps, and help the business and our and technology to come up with the best combination of market approach and solutions that are likely to do the job. So we just recently completed our 2023 CPO study, and we had a sort of auxiliary set of questions in there about SaaS and software, and we asked them for advice on what was a good way to improve contracting outcomes, and 53% of the respondents place significant value in gaining clarity on the needs and requirements of the business before proceeding. So I guess another opportunity for people to have a chat, put some ideas on the table. How do you go about finding or testing business needs, and how do you satisfy yourself that the market has appropriate capability? Yep, workshops and meetings are good. And along the lines of workshops and meetings, that those are really good kind of tools and techniques. I think this is a really key point here about getting hands-on. This is an opportunity with SaaS products that really didn't exist with on-premise products, unless you were prepared to, buy a set of licenses from a vendor and then do a test implementation. It's never been easier to gain access to software as a service products and try them out before you buy. And thinking about that process, the staged process that we talked about earlier on, even in a market scan situation, you could have workshops or meetings and introduce the business to work with the business to understand what various products can and can't do. And so I've sort of got this stack here of things that you can do from a hands-on perspective, starting at the top with the easiest, lightest touch, and then going all the way down to some much more in-depth processes that you can deploy, or techniques you can deploy to really make sure you understand what the market has to offer. And I'll go through some of those in a moment. But I think it's important that, wherever possible, you try to scan the market, understand, once you know what broadly your requirements are, you scan the market, you try to understand what's out there, and then you look to test and validate some of those products. And you can use that to then further refine what the requirements are, what the needs are. And if you're then looking to run a competitive tender process or make a selection, you can really use that to refine the requirements and tick off, how close each of those products are likely to be to your requirements. So you can always test, market solutions. I recommend test the market solutions if you can. You can do it, by yourself. You can do it with various stakeholders as part of a team. You can engage and have that like early interactive vendor engagement type activities during a tender or during a market scan, where you might look at a product by yourself, just the business, and work through what it can and can't do. But you might also work with a vendor and have them do some walkthroughs or some demonstrations, all the way through, in that stack there, to doing trials, reseller trials or implementation partner trials, running proofs of concept, or even doing limited deployments prior to, kind of a fully engaged contract that then leads to, implementation and rollout. And that also helps to build the case and really understand, and hopefully, strip away a bit of the marketing hype and really understand what the product can do. Use demonstrations during tender evaluation. So focus on the key functions that you need to demonstrate. And there's a lot of functionality you might need, which is just very standardized. A lot of finance type functions, for example, purchase orders, invoicing, all those things often quite standard. But if you have something in your business that's quite specific in those functional areas, those are the places to really jump in and make sure that it's going to do what you want. Understand your user journeys, and if you're engaging with a vendor to do a trial of some sort or a proof of concept, you can have those suppliers work with you to understand the user journey, or to do the configuration work, show you what the outcome is, allow users to look at that and exercise it and see how that would work for them in the future. And more recently, we've been considering that the reintroduction, I suppose, from a technique from the past of parallel negotiations with shortlisted vendors. And where we found this valuable is that with a lot of SaaS products, they're pre-built with a certain set of functionality, a certain set of service levels, and then a certain unit price, whether that's per transaction or per user or whatever. And in doing that, it's a relatively sort of tight equation, and the vendors try to lock down all of those pieces so that they can offer you the service at a certain service level for a certain number of dollars per user. And so we found that it's been harder to negotiate around user licensing agreements or service levels. So maintaining competitive tension with a couple of vendors in the process later on into sort of a parallel negotiations situation, we found to be quite a good tactic. And in particular, I think where a vendor isn't offering a service level that is commensurate with the rest of the operating environment, that's a really good area to dive into. If your standard operating environment is 98% availability and a vendor's offering you 95, then you probably want to negotiate with them to see if you can't get that uplifted, or to be really clear on what the gap is and what sort of mitigations you might need to put in place to manage the difference within your business. And then, the ultimate, I suppose, technique there as well is to, if you've got a number of really key business functions that you want to see demonstrated. So from this prior example I was mentioning earlier, making sure that the application programming interfaces were sufficiently robust and could do all the things that the vendor said they could do. We then set up a proof of concept, which was like the first stage of the contract. And we had, a dozen or so functional situations or scenarios that needed to be implemented. And the customer obviously paid the vendor to do that, but then had the option in the contract to be able to walk away at the end of that if it didn't meet the needs, and go back to the second place tenderer and engage them. So there's a whole lot of different tools and techniques that you can deploy there, even from really simple stuff like, a lot of SaaS products, you can just log in, create yourself an account and have a look around, using their public domain access, all the way through to doing initial deployments or proof of concepts. And again, from our study, a lot of the respondents said that they were needing to make sure, they put a lot of emphasis on really understanding what was in the market, what the products could do, and how that best matched to their requirements. And I agree with that. So anyone got any particular approaches from that list that they've used that they found work really well for managing the feature risk of their SaaS products, or any other hands-on techniques people have used that they've found valuable in the process? Otherwise, I've left sort of about 10 minutes or so at the end here, just in case people had any particular questions that they wanted to ask me or ask other people in the chat here about how they go about buying SaaS. If you've got any questions, drop them in the chat. I will endeavour to answer them. And while you're thinking about that, I'll just go back to some of the questions that were asked earlier. So custom-built software or off-the-shelf is a good kind of question. I think that my sense is that SaaS largely, fits into the off-the-shelf category, but that is also beginning to change as software becomes more widely used and SaaS products become more widely used and become the sort of go-to platform. And there is sort of a third category almost that sits in between, and that is the highly configurable software platforms. And Salesforce is sort of a very classic kind of example of that. It's a SaaS tool, but it also has a significant amount of tooling that's available on top of that SaaS platform that allows you to, for better or for worse, heavily customize that product set to do, to manage your processes and your workflows and your custom applications or applets that would sit in that kind of sales CRM environment. And for many years now, they've also guaranteed that those configurations are version agnostic, and so the product can be upgraded underneath the covers to the latest version, and that those integrations largely are insulated from that and will continue to work in the new environment. So how do you make those decisions? Again, I think it's about market awareness, and my sense would be in the current environment, you would definitely, unless you work in a particularly regulated or very specialized environment, I think you're always going to look at what's available in the market as a SaaS product first. And then you can prove from there whether an off-the-shelf SaaS product is going to do the job, or whether there's sufficient capability in that domain for you to be able to customize a SaaS product and meet your needs, or whether your needs are actually still remain beyond what the market can offer and that you need to look at custom-built product. Integration challenges, a few questions there about integration. Again, typically with SaaS products, there's a reasonable amount of documentation associated with those SaaS products about what the integration capabilities are. So you can have a look at that, and you can have a look at your own integration platforms and environments and strategies and standards and see how well that would align. You can also, as we did exactly with this other example that I was talking about earlier, run some trials with a vendor. If you've got a particular integration platform or set of standards, you could do a bit of a proof of concept, pick some key business processes or workflows, and look at how you can achieve that sort of integration. The other end of that process is to talk to the provider of your integration platform or your enterprise service bus or whatever you're using, and talk to them about how have you integrated with this product? What's your experience of strengths and weaknesses of that, and even possibly get some recommendations on to other customers that might have done the same sort of thing, and try to understand from them how they've achieved that, what the strengths and weaknesses or pitfalls have been along the way. Any other questions I can help with? I do have my QR code up here. If people have very specific questions about their own SaaS journey or environment that they want to talk to, you can use that link to book time in my diary. and I'm more than happy to talk specifics with you about what you might be facing, and the work that you need to do with your stakeholders to understand your needs, understand the SaaS market, and what the gaps and issues are there, and build appropriate strategies for managing the risk there. So please feel free to follow that link and book some time in my diary. I'll be very happy to chat to you about it. And I'll be here online for the next few minutes or so if people did have any other questions. Otherwise, that's the end of our session today. Thank you everyone for attending. I hope that's been valuable. John, did you have your hand up? Something you wanted to ask? All right, well, thanks everyone, and we'll probably see you in the new year, and we'll definitely put on a few more roundtables and see if there's some ways we can streamline things and make it a bit more interactive. But otherwise, everyone have a great Christmas break, and we'll see you in the new year.